Good morning, Stephanie.
Good morning, Rebecca. Nice to see you.
This is Stephanie Mann, Executive Director of Safe Kids Now, an organization that is nationwide and growing. You're going to show the public how important it is to realize that there really are success stories out there.
There are also stories of failure. So I'm going to give you a little contrast here about some successes and how we could be even more successful in our communities.
That's great.
Well, you had asked me to do a series on stories of my experiences as a crime and violence prevention consultant and a specialist for over 35 years. So I picked out several stories that I thought would be interesting to your listeners. And some of these are very hot topics today. And the one we're going to talk about today is a coordinator. I was a coordinator for my county, and our purpose was to organize groups into being self-sufficient and taking charge of their own neighborhood safety. So, one of our coordinators was a man by the name of Ali. And Ali was wonderful. He was very concerned about the community, and he worked in some areas of his community where they had a lot of crime. Well, one day he had been on the job for over a year, so he'd gotten to know a lot of people. And he called me up and he said, and he was talking rather strangely. And I said, "What's the matter, Ali?" And he said, "I need to talk to you. I need to talk to you right away." And I said, "Okay." So we met at a hot dog stand in a community that, and he said, "I need to tell you what I've learned, but I don't know what to do with the information." And I said, he didn't really want to tell me everything because he said it was too much for him to handle. And I said, "Well, you got to tell me, why am I here? What are we going to talk about?" And he said, "Well," he said, "I've run across a child sex trafficking ring and I don't know what to do. And I feel my life will be threatened if they find out that I have kind of made contacts and I've kind of infiltrated this organization." And I said, "Oh, I wasn't sure what to do either." And he said, and I said, "Well, tell me what your experience has been." And he said, "Well," he said, he got acquainted with several people and he found out that they were giving parents drugs for free in trade for their children for the weekend. And they would take these children over to San Francisco. They would keep them for the weekend and film them in all kinds of sexual manners and then bring them back to their parents. And I said, well, I was shocked. I said, "You mean to tell me parents give away their children for the weekend for drugs?" And he said, "Yes, and it's not that uncommon." And he said, "What do I do with this information?" And he said that he couldn't report it to the police because the police were in on it. They knew about the child sex trafficking. I don't know if that was true or not. That was what he thought. So the only thing I could think of was I knew an FBI agent. So I called him up and I told him what I had learned from Ali. And he said, "Well, we can't do anything about it unless people will come forward and testify." And I went back to Ali and I said, "Can you get people to testify?" And he said, "No way. I can't." He said, "The minute I try and ask people to do that," he said, "I'm exposed and then I'm going to be a victim. They would have no problem killing me." So what I'm telling you is that as neighbors, we need to be much more on the alert for what is happening in our own neighborhood and get in touch with the people around you, because if you know something, we are as a group powerful. Your neighborhood group is powerful and can make changes. But as individuals, it's very difficult, and it's difficult for the police. You cannot charge people and just say, I think there's this going on. You have to have proof, you have to have evidence. So for all of you out there that are concerned about children, get to know your neighbors and work together as a neighborhood to solve difficult problems, because child sex trafficking is happening in our communities every day.
Stephanie, fundamentalist polygamy, like the FLDS, is a form of child sex trafficking in the name of God. And where I grew up, they had the same problem. We were taught, as long as I can remember, we were taught that we could be killed to save our soul if we didn't do what we were told, because we were wicked and evil, and the only way we could be saved and get to heaven was to be killed, and that it was perfectly okay with God, even though it wasn't legal. The religion embraced it. Now, we want to imagine things like that aren't going on in the United States of America, that that's only going on in Taliban countries where they have polygamy. Wrong.
Wrong.
The modus operandi is the same. It is next to impossible to get somebody to go forward and testify unless they have really escaped the community and are safe.
That's right. So it really means, and what we're both saying is, you have to be involved and aware of what's happening around you. And if you'd like to know more information about how the Safe Kids Now network can be of assistance to you, go to our website, safekidsnow.com, and contact us. Join us. We are a national network. We are trying to keep kids safe, but we need you to be involved. So join us in our mission.
Are there any particular guidelines that we can give the public that will help this with this particular problem?
Well, child sex trafficking is the fastest growing problem in the United States. It's pretty scary stuff. People are snatching children. Runaway kids are very vulnerable. Talk to your children. Let them know that no one touches them in an area covered by a bathing suit. Talk to them about, you can couch it for their age group. When they're young, you don't touch the area with a bathing suit. When they're older, be aware, know, go, yell, tell. If somebody tries to pick you up or take you or grab you on the street, and remember, this is very seldom happens, but children ought to know to say, speak up, no. If someone grabs them, yell. If they run away, tell somebody, and then make sure that you talk to your mother, your father, but talk to your kids. Know, go, yell, and tell.
It's very important that people know that when children believe the best way to get along is to go along, they're in danger.
Absolutely. You want your children to develop the courage to speak up.
Most children are taught from the time of their birth to obey adults, and this makes it really rough.
Well, they need to have that inner understanding of themselves, that they are an amazing spirit within themselves, and that's their job too, to protect themselves. And that's why no one is allowed to touch them in an area covered by a bathing suit. And if someone tries to do something you don't like, talk to a trusted friend. This is something we got to get across to our children. And I must say, there are quite a few success stories. I was teaching this in after-school programs, and one little girl said to me, and this is where she told me, no, go, yell, tell. She was walking home from the bus, and a man stopped her, and now she's 13 years old, beautiful little girl, and she's got another block to walk to get to her home. He stops her, and he said, hi, I'd like to know you better. Can you give me your phone number? And she didn't know what to do. So she gave him a false number, and then she ran. Well, she came to me and she said, "What should I have done?" And I said, "Well, you need to talk to your parents that you cannot be walking home from school. If you've got somebody on that from the bus to that somebody needs to pick you up." So, but kids, she spoke up and said something. She told me, and I drove her home one night because it was too late. The sun had gone down, and I must tell you, the father said, and I didn't know whether he was going to be angry because as a teacher, you don't drive your kids home, but I wasn't going to let her go on that bus again after she told me that story. So when I got there, he was working under his car. And I said, "I want to tell you what your daughter said to me." And he said, after I told him, he said, "I will not let her walk home again from the bus." He said, "I will pick her up." And he thanked me for it. So that's just being aware of what's happening, making sure we live in a different society now, and it's going to take all of us to rebuild that safety back into our neighborhoods and changing the attitudes about who's there and knowing, do you have predators in your neighborhood? Who are your neighbors? Who's home? Do you know the cars that are in your neighborhood? All of those are things that all of us need to be aware of in order to protect our children.
It's wonderful for people to be aware of what they can and they can't do. And we have different guidelines of what we can and can't do in different parts of our country depending on what's going on. For example, in southern Utah, Colorado City, Arizona, there are several stories of teenage girls that tried to walk out of Warren Jeff's polygamous compound, were picked up by someone, either a friend or a policeman, and taken to St. George, and then, because they were underage, delivered by the police back to their parents. So they could not get away. There are also stories, some of the same people that no longer relied on the public services, but by word of mouth got word out to friends that cared, that smuggled some of them out. And this story reminds me of what you just said. It was the father that said, "I will be there. This is my daughter. I will be there." And it's amazing how many people have escaped from cults and from sex trafficking that have helped other people escape. And this is one aspect that should not be overlooked.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Our children are our future, as we all know. And our job as adults, not just parents, but as adults, is to protect them. And if you see a child, get to know them. They're one in the neighborhood. Stop and talk to them. Let them know you are a friend and are there to help, if needed. Talk to parents. Get acquainted with parents. Let them know that if you're not home sometime, your child can stop at our house. And it's up to the parents to make sure that's a responsible person that's in the neighborhood, because
Right.
not everybody's responsible. So it's up to you to find that out. And there are on the computer, there's all kinds of information about predators if you have a predator in your neighborhood. So find out who's there, get acquainted, and start working together on a project in the neighborhood, maybe a garden or cleaning up or whatever it might be, so that you get to know those neighbors. Have a block party this summer. Let's have fun and enjoy our children, all of our children.
Where are some of the places that predators hang out?
Mhm. They hang out just about any place. Of course, those stories you hear are about the parks. They hang out where children are. So you need to be aware of that. We have thousands of people that are registered sex offenders. So look that up and find out how many are in your area. I was doing a neighborhood meeting in one community, and they were shocked to find out in that whole big area, it was 16 blocks, there were 42 registered sex offenders in that area. So be aware now. Most of if and don't be afraid of predators, because the biggest coward in the world picks on children. So, as a united front, speak up to predators and say, you are not, you are a registered sex offender. We as a neighborhood knows that. We know about you. And do not approach our children at any time, because we are not going to tolerate that. So don't be afraid of a predator or a registered sex offender, uh, but speak up to them and let them know, because these are human beings, and for most of the time, these are, as children, they were victims of a predator or sex, and some of this is also within the family. Know Uncle George, know who your relatives are. And if your child says to you, I don't feel comfortable around Uncle George, then say, you don't have to be there with Uncle George. If he doesn't make you feel comfortable, then we will not see Uncle George. So, listen to your children. They are extremely wise. They have a spiritual understanding, and they can hear and learn things from, or get vibes from other people that you and I can't get because we're older. But when we were kids, children are very smart. Do not assume that your child isn't going to be able to pick up on negative information from another human being. They can be encourage them to be aware, to be self-aware, so that they can pick up and that they've learned to trust their own instincts. Our instincts are our guides. Our intuition is that's our guide too. So encourage that with your children.
I'm glad you brought up the alias Uncle George,
Mm.
because where I came from, in the closed religious order, a child had to be obedient to any man in the religion because he held the priesthood and he was the voice of God on earth to women. So you had to capitulate, and blind obedience was essential, or else.
Right.
And there was a higher ratio of child molest by far than there is per capita in monogamous communities, because the men looked at women the same way that, how can I use the example? The same way as a little black child was looked at in Mississippi 150 years ago. When we have a concept, and it's still so prevalent in so many immature people, that somebody that is a different race, a different color, or a different gender is less of a human being,
Yeah.
less of a human being,
Hmm.
and has less rights, and should be dominated.
Well,
That is so immature, but it is still prevalent. So when you see those characteristics in people, I don't care whether they claim to be religious or not,
right.
religion and youth groups and scout groups is a great place to prey upon children. Be aware.
Yeah. And you don't need to mistrust everybody,
No.
but you do need to verify. Make sure that everybody has been cleared, and especially in this day and age, we have more information available to you. So just be a smart parent.
Yeah, it does help to study the modus operandi of the person. If the person lives and speaks with disrespect
Hmm.
and talks down to people and thinks that they're piously more superior, they're just little things that grate against the soul. As you said, you can feel it. You
In
can
your
feel
gut,
it.
in your gut, you feel if you're not comfortable with someone. I remember when I was little, uh, I was at my grandmother's, and a man came into the yard, and he picked me up, and I remember screaming. I don't remember now why, but I remember screaming. And he put me down, and I ran. I had very strong feelings, and I thought I was going to get scolded. And my grandmother came to me and she said, I'm so glad you did that. We didn't know this man, but you had an inner feeling about him, and we respect that. She didn't say it in those words, but that's basically what I kind of remember her saying. I didn't get scolded. I got praised for allowing my instincts to work for me.
That is wonderful. I think it's really important that every child remember to yell, run, and tell. It's very important
Yes.
because if you don't and you're compliant, the odds are greater that you will be a victim. It's compliancy, this going along to get along and wait till it gets better, that gets you generally entrapped, more and more entrapped. And predators love compliant, sweet, well-behaved victims.
Oh, yes. Ones that they can intimidate or threaten, and they won't say anything. You need to talk to your kids about anybody that says, don't tell mommy or daddy, or pulls you on your lap. You need to talk to children, or, does something that you don't feel comfortable with. So talk to your kids. That's our message today.
And especially if it's our little secret, it shouldn't be a secret.
No secrets. Don't let kids keep secrets. Secrets are even make adults sick. When they keep secrets about relationships and, they drink alcohol. Well, think what a little child does that's trying to keep a secret that's bothering them. They don't do well in school. They don't do well with their relationships. So if you see something going on with your child, sit, ask questions, and listen. Encourage them. Let them know you love them, no matter what. You'll always love them. So it's an important part of being a parent. That's what a parent does.
I want to thank you for this educational piece here. I think it's going to do a lot of good. I think it's very important for parents to teach their children that if something goes wrong, they are not bad. The person that perpetrated the wrongness is
Absolutely.
bad. So many times children are victimized and blamed for their own victimization. Parents, please, please don't let that happen.
Don't let that happen. Children are amazing, but we have to take the time to listen to them. And I think that's probably the most important thing. I know everybody's busy, but have a special time with each one of your children to just sit down, ask questions, don't be judgmental, and just listen.
Thank you, Stephanie. You're wonderful.
Oh, thank you, Rebecca. It's good to talk to you.
You're doing a great deal of good. And I'm looking forward to next time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Lo mismo que una moneda, con ropa de azul y seda, la negra que la mintió. Todos los cueros están doblando, solo tus ojos están llorando. Y un fardo de cuento duro fumando, un culo que me llevó. Diga que siga, no sufre ni la partida, que el cielo también castiga, la culpa de la tristeza. Las manos en la tambora mientras tu pelo llora, que llora. Digo que es un tesoro de plata y llora tu corazón. No digo que es un tesoro de plata y llora tu corazón. Un broche y una termina fueron las ruinas de una pasión. Cuando con tiempo viene a porro de llena tu corazón. La plata siempre siempre la plata que hiere y mata sin compasión. Yo digo que una mulata por oro y plata se enamoró. Date que late, que el cuero del pan se bate, con manos de chocolate, el negro que la perdió. Rueda que rueda, lo mismo que una moneda, con ropa de tul y seda, la negra te le limpió. Todos los cueros están doblando, solo tus ojos están llorando, que un palo de cuero duro fumando, puro canario. La maldita, que el cielo también tranquila, la culpa de la visión. Manos en la tambora, mientras tu pena llora, que llora. Y digo que es un tesoro de plata y oro tu corazón. Y digo que es un tesoro de plata y oro tu corazón. Tu corazón, tu corazón.
Can we do it again, Suzanne?
Fue mi brazo